And I would like to start with the first question. What's menstruality exactly?
Yes, that's a good place to start. It's really a new concept. It's a new word, and it has a couple of meanings. One is it's a way of describing this whole field of expertise, really, and of the field of women's cycling life from their first bleed menarche through to menopause. And it also encompasses birth, motherhood, and our post-menopause life as well. So it is both a professional field. We work in this professional field teaching women about the psychological and spiritual process of the cycle. And there are people that teach fertility awareness, or the whole birth work sits within this field. But also it's a consciousness that is generated when women step into awareness of their menstrual cycle. So the moment a woman becomes conscious of her menstrual cycle and starts to work with it in the way that we describe, we talk about menstrual cycle awareness. The moment a woman starts to do that, she starts to awaken a consciousness within her. And we give this term menstruality to describe, to encompass this consciousness that starts to unfold. So there is an initiatory journey that women go on from menarche to menopause. And it's like a process of maturation, of growing into ourselves. And the word menstruality basically describes that. Shani, I'm sure you will add a little tweaking to what I have just said then.
It's a lovely description. It's interesting because it's a new word, Wilhelmine. So, it's kind of crazy to think that for such a long time, there was no word to describe this inner experience that women have through the process of their menstrual cycle. And so here we have this word now, and at least this way we can begin talking about the journey that women go on through their life. So, it's great that you ask, and it's one to be added to the dictionary at some point. It's not yet in the dictionary, but I'm sure that will come.
Yes, I think so too. And it's also important to know what it's about and that it's actually a thing, to be aware of your menstrual cycle. And so maybe you can speak on how we can follow our menstrual cycle and how does this help to master our energy?
Well, I love that you've picked this topic of mastering energy. And actually, before the call, Alexandra and I were having a little chat and saying, what does it mean to master one's energy? Because it's not about controlling your energy and having good energy all the time. I think of mastering one's energy as being really tuned in and responsive to how my energy is shifting and changing, and knowing how to respond to it, how to care for it, how to work with it in a good way. So when it comes to the menstrual cycle, the truth is I don't know how women manage their energy without cycle awareness. To me, it is the absolute centerpiece. We're blessed as women to have a menstrual cycle, which gives us this predictable pattern and this kind of embodied teaching of how to work with our own energy. So, for me in my life, the menstrual cycle is the way that I stay present and mindful with myself. It's the way I tune in to what's happening inside of me and connect with this pattern of activity and rest that the menstrual cycle holds. And it's this pattern of activity and rest that really supports sustainability and well-being and health at all levels. It's the fundamental underpinning of health is this pattern of activity and rest. It's a sign of life. It's a sign of vitality. So the more closely we can live by that, the more closely we can attune to that, the more vital and well and healthy our system will be on all levels. And I should probably say, this pattern of activity and rest that's built into the menstrual cycle creates a sort of map by which we can begin to know ourselves and our experiences more deeply. So the 4 phases of the menstrual cycle, what we talk about as the inner seasons of the cycle, each of these phases has its own energetic territory, if you like. It's like each of these phases has particular qualities and influences and affects us in a very distinct way, and also asks different things of us, each of these phases. So as we sort of get to know our cycle and get to know these phases of our cycle, we get to know these different facets of ourselves and these different experiences that we move through, and we learn how to work with it, how to negotiate each of these different energies in our being. And that's a very powerful thing to know. It's an incredibly empowering way of being in the world. So yeah, so that's where I will start. And then I'll hand on to Alexandra, who probably has some things to say about it. It's such a good topic.
There's something informing in me as I'm listening to you, Shani, which is that the cycle awareness, yes, teaches us we have these different energetic landscapes within us. And when you start to work with your cycle, it's like you're coming into the flow of who you are, the flow of yourself. And when you're in the flow of who you are, you start to feel more with yourself, integrated with yourself. So there's a kind of, there's a sort of kindness, there's a sort of, I think, we get into trouble with our energy when we're fighting who we are. But when we come into our own unique flow, there's this ease that comes into the system, an effortlessness that comes into the system. So life starts to feel more effortless when you recognize this changing pattern within yourself and you work with it. Yes, I think that's the best thing I could say here. Shani, you're sort of busting.
Yeah. Alexandra, can I just follow up from that? Yeah, because you sort of reminded me of something, which is, for so many women, the menstrual cycle feels like an inconvenience or a hassle. The kind of changing mood and energy that we go through feels like something that sort of disturbs and gets in the way of us being able to kind of do things and, get on with life and all these kinds of things. And what Alexandra is describing, this idea of building kindness towards that changing pattern and towards ourselves, it's like we then start to trust that actually this pattern of energy is intelligent and it's meaningful, and it is actually a system of health and well-being. So, and if we trust it, if we go with it, it's leading us to a good place. It's helping us to recover or reform or rest or revitalize or whatever the case might be. And I think this is one of the biggest...
Sorry, it sort of really creates coherence because we're coming in relationship with our own unique nature, and we're all different. Actually, we've all got different types of nervous systems. We've got different natures, and the cycle teaches you about the resilience of your own nervous system and about your own nature. Now, this may sound really strange to a woman right now who's never thought about cycle awareness. But the moment you start to step onto the path of cycle awareness, you're going to really get what we're saying. It is just so obvious. And you need to do it for a few months, although you'll feel the benefits straight away, actually. But over a few months, you'll really get to see your own particular pattern within the cycle, which will reveal something about your nature and the resilience of your nervous system. And then you get to really know the boundaries of your own nature. Now, the thing is, we end up burning out in this culture because we don't respect our inner boundaries. We just think we're supposed to be the same as everybody else, or, you know, we're supposed to live this high octane life in top gear. And of course, that's the disaster route. But you really, through cycle awareness, you learn about your boundaries. And it's the integration of all these elements that we've just been saying that creates this coherence and ease. And that is what we call mastering your energy with cycle awareness.
Yeah, I love that. You are so right about creating and listening to your inner boundaries and not crossing them to prevent burnout. Absolutely. Yes, and so Shani, you just talked about the 4 phases of the cycle, the menstrual cycle, and that they represent inner seasons. Could you share a little bit more about that? How can we walk through the phases of the cycle as our own inner seasons, and how can we work with them to optimize our energy?
Shani, do you want to set it up?
Yeah, well, just to kind of put it in perspective quickly, the inner seasons that we're talking about, menstruation is the inner winter. Those are the days of bleeding, and then the pre-ovulatory time that follows is the inner spring, and the inner summer is the phase of ovulation, and then the inner autumn is the premenstruum. So those are how we map the 4 phases of the cycle with these inner seasons. And each of these seasons has a different, as we said, energy landscape. And there is a different kind of keynote or tendency that comes through most strongly in each season. And it's really getting to know these tendencies and being able to work with them that can optimize our energy for overall well-being. So Alexandra, do you want to just name these tendencies in each season, and actually, you know, what these seasons are best for?
Yes, it's like a key note or there's a signature tune, if you like, an energy signature. So the inner winter, the time of menstruation, the signature tune of that is letting go, rest, surrender, doing nothing. It's really a time of real release and sort of detoxing emotionally, physically. It's like you're cleansing and emptying out and recuperating. So that word letting go, dropping your agendas, giving up is the key word here. And then out of that place of nothingness and rest, the new emerges. It's like the miracle of spring every month, every year. You know, out of winter, it seems impossible, but somehow the magnificence of life bursts forth. Well, we have that. And there's this feeling of new beginnings. So each menstrual month, we have this fresh start. I always say that the pre-ovulatory time, the inner spring, is the antidote to cynicism and world weariness and pessimism, because out of nowhere you're suddenly optimistic about life again and things feel possible and doable, and it has a lovely light touch about it, a playfulness. It's a time of there's natural motivation here, and it's a time for starting new things, because you just have this natural feeling of yes and a daring that comes. It's the most exquisite energy, but there is a vulnerability about it too. There's a sort of youthfulness, naivety almost about it, which should also be cherished. Shani, I'll let you come in with the next level, actually. I'll stay with the signature tune here, because there's another layer to this. The inner summer, which is the ovulatory time, as Shani said, is a feeling of resplendence, you know, of plenitude, and the key word we have here is having it all. So in a way, the inner summer is sort of superwoman territory, where you actually feel you can do everything and be all things to all people, and nothing is too much trouble. It is really the pinnacle moment. It's glorious, and milk it for all it's worth, but know that it has boundaries and that you cannot continue in that forever. So here in the inner summer is just this immense sort of capacity for doing things and manifesting things, really realizing things. And then we shift into the autumn, the premenstrual phase. And this is often the most problematic for women because, oh, how we love that summer energy. And oh, how people love us for that summer energy because we are so generous and there for everybody. And it's the perfect time for mothering. You are the good mother here. And then as you move into the inner autumn, the premenstrual time, the key note of this time is getting real, because your energy is withdrawing, retracting at this time. So the first half of the cycle is very expansive, and now you're pulling back in again. And here is where you start to introspect and reflect and really see the deeper layer of what's going on in your life. You do lots of stuff, you're out there in the summer, and then you come into the autumn and you go, hang on a minute, is that what I really want to be doing? Or is that, you might want to edit things and refine things, because for sure you've overdone it, and for sure you've said too much, because that's the nature of summer and it's glorious. And here in autumn is the reality check moment. So we call it the getting real moment. And you really have huge capacity for sight, for seeing things that you didn't see before. And you go, why on earth did I say yes to that person to do that? That is just so not what I want to do. So in fact, in the inner autumn, you're really tapping into yourself more strongly again and your actual energy levels, because we can get a little bit out of ourselves in the summer. So here is the reality check moment, and you go, oh, actually my energy isn't limitless. You discover your energy boundaries. So it's this lovely reality check moment, which we tend to call PMS and pathologize and go, what's wrong with me? Why aren't I still that summer woman? And actually that is just so wrong. It's your body going, hang on, pull in, slow down, take time for yourself. That is the most huge, one of the most powerful gifts of the cycle, is reminding you of yourself. And you have this lovely capacity to say no to things as well. You've just got this natural power. There's all these glorious natural powers. We could talk for hours on this subject. And then we come back to the winter again, where you drop your bundle again. Phew. Shani, why don't you just add the sort of top note to what I've been saying here around the sort of...
Well, as Alexandra said, we could talk for hours because there are so many layers and aspects and dimensions to the cycle process. It's incredibly rich and deep. And one of the things I love about cycle awareness is, the more I practice it, the more I get to know these inner seasons and how they show up in me. And although we're describing a template here, what is so incredibly powerful is really getting to know how we are experiencing these seasons and what we are most needing in them, and how to really care for the natural tendency that comes. And so, we talk about these base notes, but it's a very, very personal thing. And we spoke about this underpinning pattern of rest and activity. So the inner winter really is the time of our lowest energy. And so generally what that means for most of us is surrendering, and rest is the time when we most need to drop our bundle and let ourselves recover. But then as our energy grows in the first half of the cycle through the inner spring, there is this rise in energy and possibility. And here again, we need to go really tenderly to sort of care for that and not overshoot it. And then by the time we get to summer, there's this crescendo of energy and this fullness. And here it's really about taking your foot off the brakes and just going with the flow and just getting on with things. All the places we hold back or don't say yes to ourselves or this is the time to really let your energy move and flow and show yourself in the world and take action. And then in the inner autumn, where our energies start to drop, there is a real need for our systems to slow down, and we'll all feel that in our own way. So I've just crossed, I can feel that I've crossed, I'm crossing into the inner autumn now. So I'm day 17, my cycle's a little shorter. Most people, 28-day cycle, you tend to cross over around day 18, day 19. But I just woke up this morning and I can feel this weariness in my bones. You know, it's just that longing to just like, oh, just stay in bed for much longer. And even though I couldn't, because I had my children bouncing on me at 5:30 this morning, what I will do is at lunchtime, I'm going to climb under my duvet and have a little nap. And I'm going to find little ways of honoring that energy, because that tiredness is not a sign of a problem. It's a sign of a changing need in me. So this is really the kind of key to energy management and cycle awareness, is to kind of use this archetypal story that we're sharing with you as a way of just seeing more clearly what your own experience is, and just learning to trust that and take care of that in your own way.
Yeah, that's so many information. There's so much information here in this what you just said. And what I think, I love the part of honoring the winter, honoring the autumn and winter of retraction and rest. Because what I find from my own personal life, but also in my audience, is that people really have issues surrendering to rest and restoration. And so honoring the winter is not something we are accustomed to. We tend to do spring, summer, fall, like all the time, and skip winter every time. So I think it's what I learned from my own journey is that the winter and honoring that is really important. But I also know that it is really difficult to surrender to, also because of societal rules and expectations from outside, expectations from others, but also your own expectations of what you should be like. So maybe you could speak to that a little, to maybe you have some advice for women who have difficulty surrendering to these signs of you need to take a break or you're tired. How can they approach this?
Oh, yes. Can we say lots about that? This is a question that comes up all the time. Women say they can't afford to stop, you know, and we say you can't afford not to stop. And so let's just really think this through and how we can do this. And you're so right about, never mind the pressures from outside, it's the expectations we have in ourselves that are the toughest to break actually here. The first thing we say is menstruation is the anchor of the cycle, and that how you bleed sets the tone for the whole cycle. So it's not an optional extra. This is actually the foundation. This is non-negotiable. Without rest, nothing happens. Without winter, spring won't flourish. So I'm rather fierce, and you can probably hear it in my voice now when I speak to women. I start to get a little fierce with them and say, look, this is non-negotiable. Everybody has to rest, full stop, men, women alike. And we women are profoundly blessed by this amazing reminder each month to do it at menstruation. So rest is non-negotiable. You either do it consciously or it's going to happen to you in a less constructive way, by getting sick or whatever, burning out and so on. So it's that recognition, just to, in your own minds, to go, oh, wow, yes, to wake up to that reality. The second thing is, you as a woman have to give yourself permission. Your cycle is an intelligent system and it's holding you. And it's a kind of arrogance we humans have, actually, to think we can override cycles. And the research, for instance, on circadian rhythms is absolutely clear that ignoring our circadian rhythm is really bad for our health. And shift workers actually you would know this as a doctor, and there's more breast cancer, for instance. I think it was research that came out of the Netherlands actually on that. So we know this around the circadian rhythm. The menstrual cycle is no different. it's another way that we're informed. And so adhering to the menstrual cycle pattern is so effective overall. You are actually going to have more energy and more productivity by giving yourself that rest. So taking that on board intellectually is really important. And then you as a woman have to dare to give yourself permission. And then I'm actually going to hand it over to Shani, because Shani, you are an incredibly hardworking, busy mum of 2 daughters, and you share what that looks like for you and the reality of your life. And I know the reality of your life very clearly.
Yeah. Well, as Alexandra said, no one is alone in finding it difficult to stop, just because it's not an honored thing in our culture. I'll share a story with you because I love the story, and it was my husband who gave me this insight. So I one day said to him, I was sort of coming up to my bleed, and I one day said to him, I just know that I need to stop. I'm absolutely I'm exhausted, I'm tired, I'm about to bleed, but I just can't stop. My whole system was so overhyped. And he said to me, well, it's like a juggernaut, which are those long trucks that are kind of all joined up with, I don't know, the technology, long trucks, different compartments to them. He said, when that's going really, really fast, so you can't just slam on the brakes, because if you do, the whole thing will jackknife and, topple over. And it just completely hit a chord with me. I really understood what he was saying. And I really got to appreciate how when we are going as fast as we often are, it requires gentle slowing down, and small little bits go a really long way. When we think about surrender, that's a massive thing, surrender, just like give up, let the house burn down, let the children run wild, no one will eat for days, whatever. None of us can really is sneak the moments of just drop and just take these opportunities to rest wherever they show themselves. In our book Wild Power, we've got a whole chapter called How You Live This in a Non-Cyclical World, where we address this whole question. One of the things we talk about is this 1%, which is just finding 1% to honor what it is you're most needing. So like I said, I genuinely I will have lunch today, and I will lie down in my bed for 20 minutes after lunch before I get up and work to have a little rest, which is not something I might do at other points in my cycle. So I will find ways to just sneak in little bits of rest. And when it comes to menstruation, I've got to fiercely guard aspects of my life to try and just chunk out a little bit of time. But every time I take a little bit, I love it, and it makes such a difference, and it really replenishes me, and it goes such a long way for the cycle that the next time I'm able to take just a little bit more. And to be honest, you've got to ask for help, especially if you're a mother. You've got to get other people to help you out. I had a friend of mine here this week lying on my sofa while her children ran around my house, and I cooked her dinner because she was on day 1 of bleeding. That was how she got her little break, single mother. Yeah. So that was how she got her break. So we have to ask each other for help, and we have to get support, and we've got to take opportunities where they come and not aim for the ideal. We can hope for the ideal, and maybe one day we'll have it, and occasionally we'll have it. But in the meantime, let's just take what we can.
Yes, I love that. Taking your small pieces, small breaks, maybe just remind yourself multiple times during the day that you need to slow down a little bit. And I think it makes total sense that when you're running full speed, it's not even possible to stop. And that's probably what we feel inside when we say to ourselves, I can't afford to stop. Because you hit the wall when you just do that. So it's really, it's great wisdom to slow down and then
exactly
more. Yeah, I love that.
Exactly. And that's what the premenstruum is. The inner autumn is actually a time of gradual slowing down, so that when you get to the inner winter, you're sort of more ready for it. And that's why cycle awareness is really important, because if you follow that, by the time you get to winter, you'll be more ready for a deeper drop. Yeah, there's great wisdom in the cycle.
I'd really love just to add something or just affirm something here. The crucialness for women of giving themselves permission. And the moment you do that, to recognize you have a right to this. The moment a woman does that in her own imagination, she starts to get really smart about how to use her time and energy. It's so interesting, but until you say, until you give yourself that permission, you won't see the opportunities. But the moment you'll do, you go, okay, oh no, maybe I won't say, no, I'll keep quiet here. I won't put my hand up for that job. Or you're looking in your diary and someone is saying, let's do that meeting on the blah, blah. And you're going, oh, that's where I'm going to be bleeding. No, I'm not going to do that. I'm sorry, I'm busy already, actually. I can't do it. And you start to make different decisions. It is just magical how it happens. And we hear it over and over again from women. It's really hilarious. We get the most lovely stories back from women.
Yeah, it's a great sort of compass that we have built in.
Yes.
You can follow, and when we are aware of it, we can work with it. That's the main thing is being aware. And so that's what brings me to the next question is, how do women who don't have a menstrual cycle work with this? Can they also use this? For example, when they when they are postmenopausal, or when they use contraceptives and don't have a menstrual cycle, how do we do this?
Well, I am postmenopause, and I think I'm on day 16 of the moon cycle now, but I chart with the moon. Now, I love that, because the moon actually does have an effect on me. At the beginning, when we were chatting before this, I said, I feel like I'm an overexcited puppy dog because it's full moon at the moment. And I'm like, it's just filled up with the charge of the full moon. So that same pattern that we described with the inner seasons, you get a subtle feel of that through the phases of the moon. And I feel, for instance, the dark moon, I really feel the intimacy and also the ecstasy which comes with winter for me. It's very distinct. It's an echo of what I used to experience on the menstrual cycle. It's not as intense because it's not embodied, but it is nonetheless a lovely marker. And I would heartily recommend any woman who doesn't have a menstrual cycle now, for whatever reason, to actually work with the moon cycle. For women who are taking hormonal contraception, of course, they have shut down their menstrual cycle, so that's not happening, but they could just chart with the pill-induced cycle. It's not going to have the same kind of distinctions that we have described with the seasons, but it may be helpful to do that, and to also just be mindful of the moon, that pill-induced cycle within the context of the moon cycle. That would be a really, really useful thing to do. So yes, the moon cycle is fabulous for it.
Yeah. So.
And I should add here that dark moon is, or new moon is day 1 of the cycle.
Yes, and so that I certainly think of something that if you are using the contraceptive pill and you would line the use of that up with the moon cycle, then it might actually be more easy to tune into the moon cycle.
Yes, good point, actually. I hadn't thought of that. That's so obvious too. Yes.
Just a thought. And so my last question for you is, when I was having my first period when I was like 14, I wasn't taught about this at all. So I learned about the menstrual cycle in my medical training. But lots of women haven't been taught about this cycle, and they can, for more information, they can visit your Red School, of course. But how can we transmit this information and this wisdom about our inner bodily processes to our children, especially our daughters?
So, as you know, I have 2 daughters as well. Mine are a bit younger than yours, so I've got a 7 and a 5-year-old. And I I love that mothers are so keen to pass this on to their daughters. In fact, it's often a very motivating factor for women. And the thing that I think really it begins with us as mothers getting to know our cycles and getting to know our bodies, and learning to trust and respect the way our cycle is working us. And that then gets passed down just because there's a new atmosphere in the house around it. You have a new relationship with yourself. You are, they will see you behaving and responding differently to yourself. And as we know with parenting, the most powerful thing we can do is lead by example. You know, there's what we say, which generally just washes past them. And then there's what we do, which is what they then just naturally fall into. So if you get to know your cycle, practice cycle awareness, start to work with your inner seasons, you can then just bring it up in conversation with your children. You know, talk about, I've got two things in my house that my children are very interested in. I have an inner seasons dial clock, which moves automatically. It's called a woman's wisdom dial. And that shows the phases of the moon with one arm of the clock, and it shows you where I am in my menstrual cycle with the other arm. So my children can see what season I'm in. And so I can say things to them about that, like that I need to rest now because I'm in my inner winter. You know, when they want me to play bouncy games with them or whatever, I will just say, no, I'm wanting to rest and have a quiet day at home today because I'm in my inner winter. So things like that. And then now behind my toilet door, I have a beautiful calendar. It's called The Moon is My Calendar. April McMurtry made it. And it has the moon cycle on there. And now every time my daughters go to the toilet, they look at that and they're learning about the phases of the moon and where we are in relationship with that. The moon is just a beautiful, fun, exciting way for children to learn about cyclical life. You know, look up in the sky, how old is the moon today, and seeing how it grows and changes and the fluctuation and the pattern and the consistency of that. So very basically, that is the way I would start. And then there are some great resources for really educating girls, which we have. Our Menarche course, which is one of our online courses, takes women through the process of recovering and healing their menarche, their first period. And at the end of that course, we've got some great resources, books for girls, website links, places where you can share information with your children in a very, very good way. So there is lots of stuff out there, but I think the number one thing is that we make peace with our cycles first, and they see that, and that becomes an open, spoken about thing in your home. Yeah.
Yes, I love that. And the idea of making it visible in terms of a clock or a calendar, that's so helpful.
Yeah.
Children, absolutely.
Yeah. It's a radical thing, but you know, to mark your days of bleed on the family calendar, so everybody knows. You know, that's just such a powerful thing. That's such a statement. It organizes family life. That's radical.
Absolutely. So you below this interview, there will be a link to your free gift. So if women want to know more about Red School or your work, they can visit there. Can you explain a little bit about the free gift? It's called the Menstrual Cycle Awareness ebook. What will they find within that?
Well, they will find the key to everything we've been talking about today. The ebook teaches you how it gets women started on the practice of menstrual cycle awareness. And menstrual cycle awareness is the key to everything. So it is a very simple guide. It gives you a little bit of an overview of what we've been talking about today, the inner seasons and so on. And it teaches you how to record the energetics of your cycle. So we're not looking at the physical signs and symbols, you know, the fertility signs in this particular ebook, although that's really great to learn about. This is really looking at your own physical energy and emotional energetics, if you like, and recording this in a chart, and then starting to see a pattern over time. So it's really instruction in how to do what menstrual cycle awareness is and how to do it. And if women are really keen to get stuck into what we've been talking about today, then I urge you to go and get that ebook, because that will get you started. And then you'll start to then develop your own embellishments from that. Well, because once you get into this, it's great. You'll just take off with it. Anything more you want to add, Shani, to what I've just said there?
Okay, that sounds great. And it's a great way to get started with being more aware of your body in the cycle. So thank you so very much. I was honored to have you on this interview. It gave me so much information to talk about it with my children and to think about. So I would like to thank you for being with me today.
You are very welcome. I'm so glad that these conversations are happening and that the menstrual cycle is being, revealed as this incredible guide for our energy system and our wellness. So thank you very much for having us and for having this conference. It's brilliant.
It's really brilliant. Just huge gratitude to you. It's marvelous what you are doing.
Well, thank you so much, and enjoy your day.
Yes.